Hi, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com. Today we're going to make a chocolate mayonnaise cake, and this is what it looks like. This cake has a rich chocolate flavor, and yes, it does contain mayonnaise, and the mayonnaise makes this cake really soft and moist. It's really good just on its own or with a dusting of powdered sugar, but today we're going to top it with a smooth and creamy chocolate ganache. So the first thing that you will need to do is to preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 180 degrees Celsius. And then we're going to bake our cake in a 9 by 13 inch pan, that's 23 by 33 centimeters. And you can butter your pan, or today I'm just going to spray it with a non-stick spray. And then to make doubly sure it doesn't stick to the bottom of the pan, I'm just going to put a piece of parchment paper there. Okay, so now for our chocolate cake, if you have a stand mixer like I have here, use your paddle attachment, or you could use a hand mixer for this. The first thing you will need is 3 large eggs, which is 150 grams. Have your eggs at room temperature. Just dump those right in there, along with 1 2/3 cups, which is 335 grams of granulated white sugar. May seem like a lot of sugar, but we are putting a lot of, this cake is actually flavored with unsweetened cocoa powder, which is, you know, a little bitter, so then we have to have a fair amount of sugar to offset that. And then for flavoring, I'm adding 1½ teaspoons, 6 grams of pure vanilla extract. If you don't want a vanilla flavor, you could just leave that out. So now what I'm going to do is beat this on high speed until the mixture is mixed together and it becomes very nice and light and fluffy. That's probably going to take, with my mixer, probably at least 3 minutes. So, you know, may take longer depending on your mixer. Okay, so I'll just show you. This is what you're looking for. It's really nice and light and fluffy. So our next ingredient is the mayonnaise. You will need 1 cup, which is 220 grams of mayonnaise. Now you can use the regular, the full fat, or I'm using today the light mayonnaise. Either one, of course, if you use the full fat, your cake will be a little richer in flavor, but I find with the light, it's really good. So why mayonnaise? I mean, it really is kind of a unique ingredient in the cake. Well, when you think about it, mayonnaise is really just a mixture of oil and egg yolks with a bit of an acid. So, you know, it's a really smooth and creamy sauce, as you can see here. So my thought is it's replacing the oil in the recipe. So, and it really, you don't taste, when you eat it, you don't go, oh, this is mayonnaise in here. You can't even taste that. It just has a wonderfully soft and moist flavor. So whatever your favorite brand. This recipe with the mayonnaise actually was invented way back during the Depression. So I'm going to try to revive it. So now on low speed, just beat that in. Okay. And then for our dry ingredients, in a separate bowl, I have 2 cups, which is 260 grams of all-purpose flour, plain flour. To that, I'm going to add 1 teaspoon, 4 grams of baking soda, 1 teaspoon, 4 grams of baking powder, and 1/4 teaspoon, 1 gram of salt. I'm just going to whisk that. You always want to make sure, especially the baking powder and the baking soda, really whisk that in. You could sift it. And then, of course, we're making a chocolate cake. We are using unsweetened cocoa powder. You can use either the regular unsweetened or the Dutch processed, either one. And you will need 2/3 of a cup, 65 grams. And I'm just going to sift it because cocoa powder tends to have lumps. So we'll just get rid of that. Okay, and then I'll just whisk that. So we're going to add the flour in 3 additions and alternate that, as long as I don't get it all over me, alternate that with 1 1/3 cups, which is 320 milliliters, 320 grams. Now you can use, I'm actually using coffee. I like the chocolate, and coffee to me goes perfectly. You don't have to use coffee. You could use just water. So you decide which one you want. Okay. So I'll add, you know, maybe 1/3. Just eyeball that. I'm going to beat that in just on low speed because you don't want that coming up in your face. Okay, pour about half of the coffee in, or water. Just mix that. Okay, a little more of the flour. Rest of the coffee. Okay, so I'm just going to give this a quick stir, make sure, especially the bottom. And the rest of the flour. And then we are done. Whoop. Okay. I'm going to finish that off by hand. Put this to the side. So, as you can see, a really quick and easy cake batter to make. And it is so good. Okay, I think I got that. So now it's a fairly liquidy, it's not a thick, you know, when you make a butter cake, the batter is quite thick. This is, as you can see, easily pour it in there. Smell that cocoa, so good. That's pretty well evenly distributed there. I'll just... Okay, now for baking. Everyone's oven is a little different. I'm going to say 30 to 35 minutes. Now, chocolate is one of the hardest things to kind of tell when it's done. So I would check it at least, you know, maybe at 28, 30 minutes just to make sure, because it's hard, like, to just look at it and know it's done. So it will rise, it will be set. A toothpick inserted into the center will come out clean, and the sides of the cake will just start to pull away from the sides of the pan. That's another way you can tell. So I'm going to say 30 to 35 minutes. Rotate your cake pan about halfway through baking so it bakes nice and evenly. So while our cake is baking, we're going to start our chocolate ganache. Now, chocolate ganache is simply a mixture of chocolate and heavy cream, and then I'm adding just a little bit of butter. It is smooth and it's creamy and it's rich, and I really like it on a cake such as this. You know, we did use a lot of sugar in the cake, so if you kind of go, you know, I want to cut back on the sugar in your frosting, this is perfect, and it is so, it's just so good. So what you will need is, in a heat-proof bowl, you will need 8 ounces, which is 225 grams of either a semi-sweet or a bittersweet chocolate. And you want to finely chop it like I've done here. Now you can use, you just want to use a chocolate that you really enjoy just eating on its own. So sometimes you can go on the baking aisle, and they usually have bars or something there of semi-sweet or bittersweet chocolate. Or you can even go like usually where the chocolate bars, your favorite chocolate bar, and a semi-sweet or a bittersweet, you can use that too. So either one. And like I said, put that. And then what we're going to do in a small saucepan, I'm going to take 3/4 of a cup, which is 180 milliliters, 180 grams of heavy whipping cream. Now you need that fat from the heavy cream because you want your ganache to set up. You can't use like milk because there's not enough fat in it, and then our ganache won't set. It'll be very runny. And to that, I'm going to add just 1 tablespoon, 14 grams of butter. If you didn't have butter, I mean, you could leave that out. And then what I'm going to do is put this over medium-high heat and bring it up. It's going to start to bubble around the edges. You don't want it, you really want to make sure you catch it before it starts to foam up. But we want it nice and hot so that we're going to pour it over the chocolate and it will melt the chocolate. Okay, so you can see the bubbles starting to form, and it's okay, that's good. So now just take your cream and pour it over your chocolate. And I'm just going to kind of swirl it around so all the chocolate's under the cream. I'm just going to let this sit for like a minute or two for it to start to melt, and then we'll stir it. So now we want to stir it. So I got a whisk. You could just use a spoon as well, or a spatula. And you want to start in the center. We don't want to incorporate a lot of air into our ganache. We just want to mix them together. So start in the center. And then you can just make bigger and bigger circles until the two are mixed together. Now, the reason I'm making this now, ganache, you can use it in many different ways. When you first make it, if you just leave it for a little bit, it'll be very liquid, and you can pour it, use it like a glaze. If you put it into the refrigerator for a long time and it gets really hard, you can make truffles from it. Today, we want it kind of in between that because we want it as a frosting, a spreadable frosting. So what I'm going to do is now that I've made it, I'm just going to let it sit, and it'll cool down, and then it will thicken. And then we will be able, I'm going to just beat it just a bit after that, and then we will be able to spread it on our cake. So that's why I'm making it now. So that's all you need to do. And I'm just going to put it aside and let it, you want to cover it and let it cool down completely before you cover it because we don't want any condensation on there. So I'm just going to leave it like that, let it cool down and thicken up, and then when we are ready to frost our cake, it will be ready to go. So our chocolate cake is done. Put your pan on a wire rack. As you can see, it's set, rose, And it's just starting to pull away from the sides of the pan, and when I put a wooden toothpick into the center, it came out clean. So now, what we're going to do, we're just going to let this cool down to room temperature. At the same time, I have my ganache setting up. It's starting to thicken a little. So once that's all ready, we will come back, we will frost our cake, and then try a piece. So now I let the cake cool down to room temperature, and my ganache is set up. Once it cools down to room temperature, if you want to kind of speed up the thickening process, you could put it into the refrigerator for just a little bit. So now, I mean, you could just spread it right on the cake. I'm going to just whisk it for just a bit. You can do so much, like I said, with ganache. This will just lighten it up just a little. Okay. If you let it like really get quite firm and then whip it, the frosting, the ganache will be really thick. As you can see, I kind of like it like this. So, you know, you can vary it. Such a great frosting glaze. I mean, what's not to like? Chocolate and cream. My kind of frosting. And then smooth it out. Of course, if you wanted to, once you put this, you could sprinkle on some candy sprinkles or the chocolate jimmies, or even some chopped nuts, coconut. But this is all chocolate. It's what I want today. Now I'm going to cut into this right away. Normally what I would do is pop it into the refrigerator and let that ganache set up a little. Now you can store this cake at room temperature, or if you like it cold, which, you know, I do. I'll admit it. I like the frosting cold. I like the cake cold, so either one. It stays moist for actually for days. I'd say at least 5 days. And you can freeze it. And to tell you the truth, like a lot of chocolate things that you make, actually I do find it better the next day. I find that way the chocolate, the flavor seems to develop, but that's just my personal opinion, but we can't wait today, so. And just as a little, if you wanted to make this into a layer cake, you can. You can just use two, I would say probably 2 8-inch round, that's 20 centimeter cake pans. Your baking time may be a little less, but I'd say it's probably pretty close to 30 minutes, but I've never done that, so I'm not sure exactly. But I like it more like a snacking cake. I just leave it in the pan. I mean, you could take it out of the pan, but just, you know, let the kids, let everybody just help themselves. Now, I don't know if you can see that. It is wonderfully moist. It is very moist. It's dense. It's soft. You can't, it's really weird. You can't taste mayonnaise. It's just moist, soft, and really nice chocolate flavor. Like I said, typically I leave it a day and the chocolate flavor softens and develops, but it's still really good. And that chocolate ganache just finishes it off to me just perfectly. Like I said, you can store, I typically store this, cover it and store it in the refrigerator. It'll last at least 5 days, maybe longer, if it lasts that long, because everybody will like it. Or you can freeze it. So you must try this. And until next time, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of JoyBaking.com.